Morality.
Tonight, we gallivant off to a galaxy far, far away to talk about the implications Ahsoka might have, and then talk about why it is we love Star Wars. All this coming up right now on our May the 4th, special be with you. And back from our break this week, it is, of course, the Writer Brothers May the 4th Be With You special. I am, of course, your host, Petey York, joined back by Mr. Pollo Zapatos and Corione, our resident Jedi Witch in residence. Gentlemen, it was nice to take a break this week, but, unfortunately, the calendar doesn't allow us to move dates, so while it would have been nice to have gotten a break all week long, we just can't do that. We have one of the greatest sci-fi fantasy intellectual properties to discuss, one that's had a mild impact on John and I's life, I guess you could say, and clearly Corione is just a poser fanboy, judging by his ridiculous background there. It's just, we're all a bunch of phonies trying to fit in. Good, because, hey, if it comes with a 4090, and I can actually stream properly. Oh, right, of course. Thank you, Skoglioten, pointing out that I've been talking to myself this whole time. As Corione was arguing, what were you saying about Star Destroyers being the most stupid vehicle ever designed in Star Wars?
Listen, man, there is nothing more imposing
than a giant triangle.
Listen, and no greater opening in the history of film than when that Star Destroyer comes down and has that we screw, nobody screws with us, we screw with everybody look on it.
I don't know. I think Spaceballs did it better.
But you don't get to Spaceballs without Star Wars.
You know what's funny? Actually, since we're just we're gonna bring up Spaceballs, we might as well. What's funny is that I don't think a lot of people who don't know, who've never actually worked in radio communications, actually realize that the absurdity of the word jammed joke is actually not absurd at all. It's totally like an effective countermeasure to jamming someone's radar or sensor or transmitter. If you actually put crap on the dish, it will not function. But it looks so silly because they use a giant, jam jar and they make it silly. But I'm like, nah, if I had a giant jam jar to jam communications, you better fucking believe I'm going to use it. Sorry, I got to remember to turn on my church swears again.
No, it's all good, man. That would have been the greatest Coast Guard move of all time, is just having like a catapult on the deck with a giant jam jar.
Would have gone over a lot better than a cruise missile, I'll tell you that much.
Well, yeah, right.
Oh yeah. No, we could definitely, we could absolutely talk about Spaceballs, but we could also, yeah.
I feel like you're not gonna get a lot of flack from other countries if you're actually using jam instead of rockets. Like, oh no, the Coast Guard's jam hit us. Like, guys, quit whining. It's free food.
Scrape some off and put it on the toast. You'll be good. It's free. They've actually done us that would actually be a very Coast Guard thing to do, because it's humanitarian in nature, right? Yes, we're effectively stopping the countermeasure of the enemy's radar, but the poor people get to eat, so it works out.
I'm just imagining, this Coast Guard ship sees I don't know, some Russian nonsense ship out in the middle of nowhere, and the captain goes, "All right, we got to jam their radar." And out onto the deck, somebody wheels this big catapult, launches this giant jam jar. It hits perfectly right on their telecommunications dish. And then all these Russian cooks start running out and scraping it onto toast.
Well, looks like we get to eat tonight, boys. We can actually have with jelly jam sandwiches. Communications jam special.
There's an incoming vessel, and it's bread.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. That's a great gag. Well, anyway, it's Star Wars Day, and it's actually really I consider this the beginning of Star Wars month. Some people like to refer to May 1st in reference to the 501st, which hey, if that's when Star Wars month starts for you, great. It starts for me on May the 4th for the obvious May the 4th pun references, and as a writer, I do have a little bit of an extra appreciation because I'm better than all of you.
This is the May, right?
And that's exactly what I was getting to, was that, yes, it is Star Wars month because we have, the month of May is when the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy all released. And, we even now have a catchphrase to go with it. This is the May. And so for today's special, because we've been busy both in real life and needed, just kind of getting overwhelmed trying to crank out content. Believe it or not, this is actually stressful. We didn't really get a chance to promote this as much, and so we're just kind of doing we're going to look at Ahsoka since it is coming up, and we will be watching Ahsoka and reviewing it on our regular Tuesday night show. So I figured, you know what, we'll just talk about Ahsoka again and watch the trailer and see what we think, and then after that, we're just going to go open mic Star Wars. Original plan, we'll just run the show 2 hours as normal, unless we get enough interest to keep going, then we'll just keep going. Or, you know what, even if the three of us want to keep talking about Star Wars for more than 2 hours. Okay.
Yeah,
It's the reason I get excited to talk about New Trek. It's like, even when it sucks, I'm like, wow, but we're talking about Star Trek. I mean, come on. What a time to be alive.
There you go.
Actually, one of the other panelists just finally decided to show up, so we'll let her get settled and then we'll review the. Let's go back to Spaceballs.
Oh, your audio cut out.
Muted himself. We'll have to let that go.
Yeah, so now that PD's muted, I guess we can talk about what we really think of PD, without his ability to argue back.
Whether or not Han Solo is actually Kylo's dad.
Yeah, sorry, I had to refresh my page because my connection's severed.
With Han Solo.
See, I was actually going to release the super secret info about PD that he doesn't want anyone to ever know.
Unfortunately, when my StreamYard goes out, we all go out, as we're now embarrassingly seeing on the
a fairly reasonable friend and, a nice guy to generally hang around with. Things that he would never want the world at large to ever be aware of.
No, not at all. Can you guys hear me on your end?
You can hear him actually. If you actually watch his voice, you can actually see him swearing a blue streak and not being able to refute my general assessment of him as a decent and kind human being.
It's even better because you can actually hear him responding on the actual show, but you can't hear him in our chat.
Okay,
well, that
doesn't
better.
make any sense.
To talk over him.
Yeah. Well, in that case... Well, we suffer through some technical difficulties, of course. Just bear with us. Everything that wants to go wrong has decided to go wrong, including barely touching my connection cables and losing my mic and everything on the show and in the voice, and so we'll see. John, can you finally hear me now?
Still muted on my end. I can hear you on the show, though. I cannot hear you. But I'm...
Dark, though.
All right, eventually we'd figure it out. Okay. Where were we? Oh, yes, Ahsoka.
Hey, there we go.
Okay, so, we're waiting to get the next panelist in so that we can properly talk Ahsoka. But, just a little bit of a brief rundown. I'm looking forward to this show, believe it or not. Even though I felt that Mandalorian could have just been a 3.5-hour movie, and, or at least this season could have. And while I don't have any confidence in the state of Star Wars, because while they did try to give KK her Viking funeral, she just kind of was like, no, we're not doing that, and changed everything. So it's like we have no idea what the hell's going on at Lucasfilm. There's rumors of Favreau leaving, Filoni leaving, KK staying until the end of time. Who really knows? Skoglioten writes in, cautiously optimistic. That's probably where I would put my feelings with Ahsoka as well. I'm definitely a little bit more on the hopeful side, but who has a thought?
Well, I was going to say, when you said who knows, arguably Cameron Pashaw's source, The Sparrow, knows.
Ooh, what details of The Sparrow do you have to share with us?
Well, now keep in mind that, I have absolutely no connection to this Sparrow in any way, shape, or form for anybody who's listening who may be, law enforcement or what have you. But from what I've heard and what I've been able to piece together between the information that has been absolutely confirmed from Sparrow's side, from all the other information that I've managed to piece together, look, every word that, you can tell that Kathleen Kennedy is lying because she is making noise with her mouth. That's the general understanding. So if you go in assuming that every word that Kathleen Kennedy says is an absolute lie, then, hey, Star Wars is looking pretty damn good, right? I recently did a video called Iger's Game, which I think addressed a lot of the current fog of war around Lucasfilm and why it is the way it is. And I think, if you take a look, as I said in that video, Kathleen Kennedy's, 69, 70, somewhere in there, right? Depending on whether you believe her birth certificate or what her publicist says.
She's years old.
Right. She's gotten to the point now where, and it typically takes within 5 to 7 years to get a Star Wars movie spun up into production and to release. She should be well and truly retired by the time the next release happens. So nothing that she's producing right now, she's actually going to be involved with by the time it hits shelves. So the logical thing at this point is we can literally ride it out for just a little while longer and she'll be done, she'll be gone, and we can get people who actually care about the series to care about the series.
I wonder if
for
that's the case, though, in the sense that, like, it really doesn't feel like the executives at the top of Disney are showing very much concern.
Well,
Like-
I mean, ultimately what they're concerned about is money, right?
Right. And aside from was it The Last Jedi that was the one that was the major flop, or was it the
Solo.
Solo was technically the major flop monetarily because people were mad. People hate The Last Jedi. I actually think Rise of Suckwanker is worse, in my opinion. But we'll get into that on the open mic discussion. Sorry.
Yeah, well, my argument on it is, though, that, you know, like, yeah, they're concerned about making money. They're not going to produce shows right now that aren't going to make money. So making, like, a Rey continuation show is not going to make money, right? It just won't. So why would they release it, right? Out of the 4 projects they talked about at Star Wars Celebration, there are only 2 that I could see making money. One is a Dave Filoni movie where he kind of wraps up the Mandoverse, or at least one small section of the Mandoverse. And the other one would be like a Jedi origin, like the first Jedi kind of story, which could be interesting, right? I mean, a dude figuring out, wait a minute, you know, I have the ability to move random nonsense with my mind. How cool is that? And then going from there, right?
Well, I don't know. I feel like that's kind of like my big fear, especially like from what Kenobi came out to be, is like, I feel like there was a time when people were very clearly starting to understand what the Force was and the difference between the Force and your standard magic in as far as like fantasy elements go. But nowadays, like, it really just feels like the Force is borderline Captain America with telekinesis. And that's not what the Force was. I feel like the only way that one at the beginning of all the Jedi works is if it's some form of Avatar: The Last Airbender mixed with Kotar. Like, they really have to go back to the like Kotar's origins, and they really have to like mess with the powers, because I think that like I mean, well, there's the other thing. So like the first Jedi, there's the idea that, like, is it the first Force user, or is it the first noble Force user? In a world of Sith, where everybody that has the Force is just a superhero tyrant, are they now going to like continue that trend? Which is like my big fear.
Okay, so it depends on how much they're going to grab of the established canon to make this work. I'm about to put on like my hardcore Star Wars nerd hat here, because
Go for it.
I go deep into the lore here, but the Rakan Infinite Empire, as I recall, were the first Force users in the galaxy. They all got themselves wiped out in their own stupidness. And they had wound up teaching their slaves that they had gathered throughout history some knowledge of the Force. And at some point, a couple of those Force users kind of got together and started a sect, a group, or whatever you want to call it, where they sat down all together and started kind of figuring out what their abilities actually were and how to manipulate the Force. And that's when the first schism in Force users hit between light side and dark. That would be the perfect time to set this story, where there's basically a bunch of space wizards sitting around and they have a disagreement on whether being rational or being passionate is the more valuable use of the Force. Because you could get into some deep philosophical lore, you could have some cool fights, and you could clearly start defining why the bad guys are and why the good guys are. And it could be really neat.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I felt Star Wars was kind of moving towards, and that's what I really enjoyed about the character of Ahsoka and Rebels in particular. was the fact that they started to go to those kind of, well, what if we do something that's not like strictly Jedi? What if we start touching on those Grey Knight in between levels? Because and that's what I especially liked what the KOTOR universe does, especially in SWOTOR, is, well, SWOTOR does both a very good job, shows very good examples of moral gray areas, and then they show like crappy examples of moral gray areas. Like, for example, when you're playing as a dark side character and you have the choice between well, your light side option still results in a guy dying. It's like, but it's honorable or something. It's like, okay, this shouldn't even be an LVD choice. This should literally just be how you kill the guy and leave it at that. And it's like, because what's the moral that's being argued here? And I don't mean like, okay, yes, there is probably a difference between giving someone an honorable fight versus, you know, just shooting them in the back of the head. But the point is, if the end game is that you want to kill them, whether honorably or not so honorably, that doesn't make you a better person either way. You shouldn't just want to kill them. So it's like, it's really interesting though, but it's really cool at the same time that they showed that the varying differences, because when you're playing as a Sith, you end up encountering the most just stuck-up, obstinate, yet also hypocritical Jedi Masters. So they're not really good guys either. But then on the Jedi side, you encounter just the most ridiculous, over-the-top, dark side evil guys. And yet when you play both sides, that's when you start to realize, oh, the whole concept of sides is a bit more glossed over, and lines are considerably more blurred in different directions. We focus too much on the crazies of both sides that we just don't see that the most of us are actually more center-minded. And that applies either whether it's politically, religiously, spiritually. It's all just, if we all just learn to shut up, and if we all didn't have insecurities, most of our problems would probably be solved almost instantly. But I got philosophical for Star Wars. But that's what I guess what you're trying to say is we want to see more of that philosophical injection. Because on the one hand, whereas I'd say, well, if you want philosophy, go watch Star Trek. Even Star Trek, to broaden its audiences, had to kind of be more like Star Wars, even. And at first I hated this idea, but as I've gotten older, I've realized both Star Wars and Star Trek benefit from trading from each other and taking aspects that okay, you know, we could tell a similar story that we can on Star Trek with Star Wars. It's just going to be more spiritually focused. It's going to be more fantasy. It's going to be more, you know, this is like, but it's still going to be beneficial philosophically. Whereas Star Trek, while it does the philosophy well most times, it just loses people with the, like, one of the biggest things that people can't get over, especially with TOS, is some of the visuals are just too much for people to handle. And, you know, on the one hand, you think, well, it's because they're just too dumb to overlook it. And it's like, well, no, if somebody's storytelling and learning medium has to do more with a visual aspect, then if you want people to learn your story, you've got to be able to somewhat cater to audiences. And that's why Star Trek being a little bit more action-y at times, you know, can find that balance. But
well, I think you bring up a really excellent point, and I submit this to you guys. If you only had the budget for one of these things, which would you consider more important? The visual effects or the storytelling? If you only had the budget to pull off one of them.
I'm putting all my money in visual effects.
Okay.
But it's always the story.
Because I can, you know, pay my own bills as a writer. So the quality writing is already there. So I only need to pay for visual effects. I've already written a book that just needs to be changed into other mediums. It's done. It's probably not the greatest book ever, but it's not garbage. If you hated Picard Season 3, you might actually like my book. That's an odd selling point.
It is. But
if you didn't like this thing, you might like my thing.
Yeah, like my argument boils down to why, at the end of the day, why 8-bit Nintendo games are still played today. Because the story in those older original JRPGs was actually really good. And if you could handle the visual, like if you could understand that, hey, at the time they could only do 8-bit graphics, then you know what? You kind of sit there going, hey man, once you finally do the lore bits in Zork, you realize how good a game it is, even though it's only text-based.
Right, but the problem is it's not just the visuals that turn people off of TOS2. It is also worth mentioning that whilst a lot of the story structure and content is usually pretty good episode to episode, some of the execution's a little rough.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And it, you know, that's why I don't fault people. It's like, this is also why you take something like the original series and you set it apart. It's wholly Star Trek. It's the same reason when I have people who argue, oh, you know, prequel trilogy or sequel trilogy, I'm like, good, I'm glad we agree that original trilogy is best trilogy. You know, yes, we wouldn't have Deep Space Nine and the motion picture films, which I consider the best of Star Trek, without the original series. But the difference is...
Oh, dude!
If we compare the original series to the original Star Wars, one is clearly
look,
better.
when it comes to like Star Trek, I kind of consider, like, the way I look at it is Star Trek, you know, original series, Old Testament, Next Generation, New Testament, right? You know, Deep Space Nine is like the Quran, and then like New Trek is like the Book of Mormon, right? Like it's, you know,
that's fantastic.
Right? I mean,
oh my
and
God.
then, you know, I look at Star Wars and I kind of look at it the same way, right? Like, original Star Wars, Old Testament. Prequels, New Testament, right? You know, the sequel trilogy, Book of Mormon, right? Like, it's...
I think that's an insult to the Book of Mormon, if I'm being perfectly honest.
And to all my Mormon friends, relatives, brothers, what have you...
I think there are more fans of the Book of Mormon than there are of the sequel trilogy, just
that
saying.
Is entirely possible, yes.
Yeah. Skoglioten writes in, the Book of Mormon is basically Jesus Part 4, Jesus in Space. Which they covered in The Expanse.
Yeah, basically that's... Skogli, I'm right there with you. You know, actually, I would... You know... It's an interesting watch if you read the Book of Mormon and then go watch the original Battlestar Galactica. You'll find some very interesting commonality there. But honestly, look, that's just how I see it though, right? Like, you know, it feels like, you know, the sequel trilogy feels like, to me, George didn't write this and you can tell, is kind of how I would put it, right? I mean, look, I've read George Lucas's original drafts for a lot of his stuff. George needs an editor, like, really badly needs an editor most of the time. I am not going to say he is a great writer by any stretch, but he isn't a fantastic idea man. And if he basically creates the scenes and the flow between the scenes and then has somebody come in and actually write the dialogue, like, you have something special there, right? Like, okay, honestly, think about this for just a second. George Lucas comes up with the concept for a new Star Wars movie. The dialogue is written by Quentin Tarantino. How amazing would that movie be?
Yeah, too awesome to exist. I'm sorry.
Yeah, right.
That's like that. That's like that Quentin Tarantino.
Does the visuals.
I really wish that they had given Quentin the keys to the fourth JJ Trek film, because I was like, when I heard his version of it. But at this point, with how the JJ movies have gone, I mean, if Into Darkness was allowed, forget. Why not? Hell, just get anybody at that point to direct a movie, because holy crap, is Into Darkness a pile of trash. I may have watched it recently. But anyway, speaking of Star Trek, Star Wars, they're just the same so much. Don't worry about it.
So,
oh.
So we're gonna watch the Ahsoka trailer then?
In a second, our other panelist is just getting settled in, and she'll be joining us momentarily, and then we can get it. I'll also have to get it. Actually, I'll take a real quick to kill us off air. Don't worry, guys, we're still here. It's just the way I have this set up is so not great and efficient right now. It's one of my motivators to change our format up just a little bit, and it's gonna happen eventually. Cool. Now that that's back, I can bring us back on, and we've got that ready to go, and that's queued up.
So while you're doing that, I can vamp a little bit. I got something fun to kind of show off.
Please do.
So I managed to, believe it or not, I actually have a fan of my YouTube channel, and they sent me some kyber crystals from Disney.
Nice.
Cool light crystal here as well. Let me pull that out. Yeah, here we go. A Count Dooku. You'll notice that it's got a little bit of a bend in it, so I'm not sure exactly what that says about Dooku, but it's an interesting thought. And I managed to pull in my random, trying to pull a random kyber crystal. I pulled a black kyber crystal.
All
so,
right.
I figured out that these wouldn't be too difficult for me to 3D print. So, guys, I'm gonna need like a Jesse to my to be doing this. So, guys, want to get in on my kyber crystal meth lab?
Nice. All right. We've now brought our last intended panelist. Now, of course, if anyone for this particular Star Wars special, if you're watching, want to share in the comments, and I would like to maybe get on the show, please DM me via Twitter. Oh, we have a little camera going behind the scenes there. All right. So, as I mentioned,
we now have proof that H. Marie has, in fact, a lower body.
Yes,
that none of us have ever been able to be proved of.
My shirt.
She's excited to show off.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Very, very nice. Dark Side of the Death Star.
I stole it.
Some of the best, overrated music in my opinion as far as that specific album. But Pink Floyd as a band is one of the greatest bands that ever existed, along with one of the greatest shows, movies, universes that was ever conceived. So yeah, so much awesome for a single shirt. All right, so Ahsoka trailer. I think we are now ready to view. We're going to go ahead and pull it up live.
Screw it, let's do it live.
All right, so hopefully the audio's going through. Otherwise, this is going to be another awkward moment of awkwardness.
Something's coming.
It is not going through the proper.
When you
yes,
set it up to present, did you?
It's going out on the stream.
Okay.
Something dark.
Yeah, I can hear it.
I sense it.
This is a new beginning. For some, war. For others, power.
It's been a while. Things have changed. I started hearing whispers about Thrawn's return as heir to the Empire. We have to prepare for the worst. The Jedi fell a long time ago. There aren't many left.
Perhaps it is time to begin again.
Alright, so why on Star Wars Day, when I want to rave about what Star Wars means to me, am I talking about... Alright, we'll bring this back up and we'll go through it in a second. Why am I talking about the Ahsoka trailer after Book of Boba Fett was such a disappointment and I found Mandalorian Season 3 to be a bit of a... Well, here we go, the progression of events. So that trailer drops, right? I think during Star Wars Celebration or whatever, and I watch it, and I'm like, I don't know why. There's just something about watching this. I feel like I should be more excited, and I'm thinking, you know what, I'm not, because Star Wars is just awful. It really has. I mean, Mando was kind of getting better, but then it kind of, well, went full KK Star Wars on itself, and I know some people liked it, and I'm not trying to bash you for liking it. That's not, my opinions are for me. Let's just make that clear. But I started watching it, and I'm like, there's just something about this trailer that feels correct, but I don't know what it is. Well, as it turns out, and I haven't had this confirmed since I heard about it, but I think I think there's plenty of reason to suspect that it's true. As it turns out, George Lucas might have been on the set. Now, the reason that's a big deal is because, as far as I know, he wasn't on the set of Mando Season 3, but he was on Mando Season 1 and 2. Now, for me personally, when it comes to canon, I don't care what corporation owns the intellectual property. They don't get to decide canon. The creators get to decide canon, then the fans, and that's it. There is no corporate, you must accept the corporate canon. That's never happening. So if George is on set and he's approving of what's going on, that has me very hopeful. It also has me hopeful because there's a lot of Rebels going on in this trailer. A lot. And we actually just hit season 3. And so when I watched the trailer a second time, knowing that George might have been on set, it started to feel like when I watched those trailers for The Force Awakens for the first time. It started to feel like those trailers when, you know, Star Wars was coming out when John and I were kids. It started to get that, okay, there might be some proper original Star Wars mixed in with, because the visuals on Star Wars have been fantastic. I will give Mandalorian praise. Best visuals in sci-fi, I think, this year that I've seen so far, anyway. It was those composite shots, seamless. I couldn't tell, like, that. Yeah, it's amazing. I was very impressed with how well the visuals have progressed for Star Wars. Probably has some of the most crisp visuals all around. Well shot stuff, very crisp, very clean, very Star Wars.
And yet everything has like a little bit of grime on it too, right? Like it's crisp but grimy. Like I don't know how else to describe it.
I didn't feel like there was a lot of grime with this, though, with this trailer. It was like there's and it doesn't feel like they're giving away a whole lot either. All right, so of course we have a live action Lothcat for the first time ever, so that's awesome. I'm not a huge fan of these cats personally, but
Mando season 2 actually had one.
Oh, they did?
Yeah,
I forgot.
You know the bar where they pick up Cara Dune the first time? Actually, so it's season 1.
I think you're right. You know what? That's right. I must either didn't notice or maybe I did get excited for the time. But she's on Lothal though, so of course she's got a Lothcat. Yeah. We get to see live action Sabine Wren for the first time ever. She's decided to grow her hair out this time, which cool. I know some people were upset because she didn't have the pixie cut that she did in the animated show, but it's like, guys, eventually she was gonna full in and change her hairstyles, change her hair color like every other episode. So
my understanding actually is the scenes with her with the longer hair are from later in the timeline. Like this is gonna time skip a little bit.
Yeah. No, I imagine that this is like, I think this is post. It's probably I don't know where exactly this takes place, and you know what? I'm just going to see what it gives us at this point and go from there, because the timeline for Star Wars is just like Star Trek. Everywhere. It's all over the place, and multiverse is changing everything, so it is what it is. Hera, woohoo.
Yeah.
Live action swearing
Chopper.
Droid. Yeah. This droid kills people.
Yes.
Anyway, without even thinking of any potential, it's just, no, he's...
Oh, H. Marie's got a thing there. She put her hand up.
Go ahead.
He's an homicidal ADHD droid. You have no idea what he's going to do, but you've got a 50-50 chance on whether or not he's actually going to kill you. And it's wonderful, because I semi-relate to him being in the service industry.
You know, it speaks to the volumes of a writer when you can make a droid that relatable.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I
mean, the whole crew of the Ghost was fantastic for that.
I mean, we did get a little bit of live action Chopper in Rogue One, but he was just, moving in the background. Now, this one, he's got one of his arms out. He's probably, swearing to himself like he normally does. Oh, yeah. No, I did come around to Chopper. Okay, now we get into our new characters. All right, this one, I've got theories for.
Okay.
Now, so unfortunately, we will be discussing some Rebel spoilers. We'll try to be a bit ambiguous with them if we can, but so with the Veil of the Force, for those who don't know Rebels, you need to go watch all 4 seasons. I'm in the middle of a rewatch. First of all, it is way better than I remember it being first and second season. And I praised those seasons when my initial watch through, but I was like, I could have sworn this show was way more cringe. Maybe it's because Mandalorian and other Star Wars live action shows have just been so bad and cartoonish lately that it's hard to tell. Because, wow, for a cartoon, it is definitely up there. But even just as a Star Wars story, it's definitely, it's up there with Clone Wars. Even gets as good as original trilogy stuff. So, definitely worth checking out. Well, they have this plot point in Rebels called the Veil of the Force. The Veil of the Force more or less allows you to do is travel. Well, it's used as a time travel device, but it's also possible that there's implications the Veil might even be interdimensional beyond just simple time travel. Like, we're talking alternate Star Wars universes or potentially alternate universes in general. I'm pretty much of the belief that we could see the Avengers in Star Wars. No, I don't actually want that, but it could happen because of the Veil of the Force. With that, it's hard to... I know that this character does not have the name Lana Beniko, but she does very closely resemble Lana Beniko from SWTOR. Like if I was going to cast a live-action Lana Beniko in the younger years, there she is. Lana Beniko is a very important Sith character in Star Wars The Old Republic's The Shadow of Revan and eventually The Return of Revan storyline. She's actually a huge part of all the story from that point going forward. With the Veil of the Force in play, I do think it is entirely possible that this could be the same character, as ridiculous as that sounds, because this could maybe be where she does her initial training, she sees the future, and is taken back in time. Go ahead, Anna.
Well, that's kind of where I was going, but I was going to say, it looks like if it's her, it's almost a younger version of her. So we could potentially be seeing her formative years as to what we saw in SWTOR when she's older.
Yeah, so at some point she travels the Veil to go back in time and live out this, which is honestly, I wouldn't... The Veil opens possibilities for Star Wars, that's all I'm going to say.
Well, okay, do you guys want to know what the deal actually is with her?
I mean, if you've got actual hard details and want to kill all my hopes and dreams, please do.
Sure. So do you remember in the trailer the male red lightsaber wielding bad guy?
Well, we don't know if he's a bad guy. There she is with the lightsaber.
Well, okay, but generally if you're wielding a red lightsaber, you're not generally an awesome friendly dude. Okay? So for those that have read Heir to the Empire, the basic plot point is...
Red as in R-E-A-D, not the color now.
Correct. The basic plot is this. Thrawn has realized that the reason why the Empire got whooped was because it did not have a sufficient number of force-wielding people. The Empire did not have a sufficient number of space wizards available to them.
Yeah, that whole rule of two thing I always thought was dumb.
Right. So his thought process was to clone a force wielder so that they would always have the access to like a lieutenant level individual that had the force that could lead their forces. This was a Jedi before the Purge that Thrawn had captured and wound up getting to turn to the dark side and now works with him. The girl is his apprentice. And they've been using DNA from Force users to attempt to clone evil Force users to lead Thrawn's new attempt to retake the galaxy.
So we're basically stealing from Jedi Outcast with the Reborns as well as Force Unleashed 2. Okay.
Yes. H. Marie had a thought there.
Yeah, well, you actually just reminded me. The reason why they were trying to get Grogu is because he's a Force wielder, because they wanted to mess with his DNA.
Yes.
So that sounds like they're probably going to tie it into Mandalorian with that somehow, maybe. But that just popped into my head.
Yeah, that is potentially what's going to happen there. But the idea is Thrawn is going to be in charge and using this dude to kind of puppet around.
Figured it out. I figured out who this guy is. You said it, right? He wields a red lightsaber, so he's a bad guy. I got it. It's Kelren Beck. Because he turns into a white guy, so he's a bad guy.
Yeah, there you go.
I know, it's stupid.
Now, I also want to point something else out to you guys.
Actually, I gotta follow that up though. SWOTOR. That's exactly how the dark side corruption works in SWOTOR. You slowly turn lighter the more evil you get. And I'm like, huh, okay.
Yeah, which makes me probably the Emperor of the Sith at this point, but
right behind you, buddy.
Yeah. But I just wanted to point out, I don't know if you guys noticed this. Do you see what's in the background of this scene?
The Veil of the Force.
Indeed.
That's why, like, you might. So, are you drawing your theories based off of the book that this show?
So so in an interview, Filoni very clearly said that he had been working with Timothy Zahn to adapt the Thrawn trilogy into the Mandoverse. Okay. Well, Mandoverse, Filoniverse, however you want to refer to it. But he was very clear about that. The fact that they actually use the term the heir to the Empire, I think really gives you a hint as to what the plans are going to be going forward.
I will not be surprised if they basically lift that entire series. And you'll probably be our regional expert because I apparently had foreknowledge to not bother reading any of the books of the extended universe.
Timothy Zahn is probably one of the best Star Wars writers out there.
That's what I've heard. I'll probably will give it a try, but I think that could also be some misdirection, though. Either the trailer is doing some heavy misdirection, or that particular interview is doing the misdirection, because I'm still not entirely sold that this also couldn't turn out to be an alternate universe Anakin Skywalker. And that's how it's integrated into the heir to the Empire plot, is that, yes, it's a different Force user that works for Thrawn, but Thrawn went a step further in this iteration, and he went into the Veil of the Force to pull out the most powerful Force user he could, so he went with alternate universe. Now, this is not just being thrown out there. I mean, yes, he kind of looks like the older Anakin from the original cut of Return of the Jedi, Force Ghost Anakin. But there's more clues that support this theory. For one, the lightsaber hilt, and even color, matches to the original Star Wars poster that Vader has. Vader has a similar sized hilt, and even down to the color. Also, see if I can go ahead here real quick. I'll just play this clip. Here he is fighting in a hallway against, New Republic soldiers. But look at the way he's moving. That's very
That's very Vader-y.
Very similar. Here, Corio, why don't you keep talking for a second? I'm going to pull up another clip real quick.
Yeah, I mean, like, to be perfectly honest, I think it's clips like this that remind us why you never fight a Jedi in a hallway, right? I mean,
I've tried. John and I had tried we've done our fair share of lightsaber fights in cramped spaces. I don't understand why they put this in movies. It's like totally impractical.
I don't know, man. I think the last thing I would ever want to do is be stuck in a box without exits fighting a dude with a laser sword. That seems like the worst possible thing I could get myself into.
Fighting with a laser sword in a box is already a bad idea.
Well, I mean, not for the guy potentially who's wielding the sword. If even coming close to touching the sword is going to vaporize you practically, right? Like, dude, that is just not the place you want to be.
All right, so one more time. Here we have his apprentice flying. Here he is on board, doing his Star Wars thing. And yeah, let's just take a look at this real quick.
Moment of that whole movie.
Now, he's a little bit more fluid on this. Not quite as robotic.
So I just want to point something out that I feel like is very important to realize in this scene. All right. Vader's suit has lights on the front of it, okay, that are part of his life-saving apparatus. If you watch, those lights are off, which means he literally turned off his ability to breathe.
He fucking held his breath.
Yeah, just to get the terror effect of lighting up his lightsaber in complete darkness and looking like an absolute horrifying badass. If that isn't dedication to your craft of being an object of terror in the galaxy, I don't know what would be. I mean, how badass do you have to be to like hold your breath just so that you can look slightly more badass for like 5 minutes?
Nope. I think his controls have a dimmer switch. Because he doesn't turn,
okay.
Either he's holding his breath the whole time, but he's not because he's breathing. So I think they made a mistake on the movie.
Okay, but
yes, I know I agree with the
funny.
implication, and that's exactly what it should have been. It should have been you had him breathe, and then the saber comes on, and then the lights come back on, and then the whole thing is there. But no, they just didn't have lights on, so that was.
I don't care. That's my headcanon. I choose to believe it.
So
that he literally tried to suffocate himself just to look slightly more badass.
Oh, that's totally within the character of Darth Vader. Absolutely. Vader is not. He never once. I don't know. Some people's understanding of Vader is they think he's intelligent and calculated, and I'm like, no, the dude's a bitch for the Emperor. The Emperor is intelligent and calculated. Vader's a dog. Vader is just a pawn. He's not a badass in my opinion. I don't think Darth Vader is badass at all. I've never found Vader to be badass. I know a lot of people think that, Darth Vader, he's so cool and whatnot. I'm like, Anakin Skywalker was cool. Vader is just whatever was left of Anakin Skywalker living out his days in pain and suffering because he backed the wrong horse. And that's why I just don't I've never really understood the Vader praise aside from recognizing that yes, as a presence, Vader is intimidating, is imposing, but the dude literally was ready to just throw off his master for the sake of getting his son to come on board to overthrow the Emperor. And when Luke said no, he was like, all right, well, status quo it is. I'm just going to go back to being the Emperor's bitch. No big deal. I don't care. It's like, Vader just seems like, he's already a dead man walking in a dead man suit. He's a zombie. It's probably the best way to just
the way I prefer to look at Vader is I think of him as a tragic figure, right?
Absolutely.
Like, I feel like he was this, this like amazingly, amazingly talented Jedi that was manipulated more or less from day one, was turned into a tool by somebody else. And really, when you think about it, right, he was born a slave. He got freedom, surrendered that freedom immediately to a group of space wizards, and then got re-enslaved right away. Like, that's a tragic story. And the more horrifying thing is his cage was so wide, he didn't even see the bars as he became Vader, right? Like, he's still just a slave in that suit. He just doesn't realize it. And that's what the most tragic thing about him is. At least I think, anyway.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. It's a tragic character, but like I said, he's never truly free, is he?
No. Well, okay, I would argue he is free for all of about 10 minutes in episode 1. Like, he's free after winning the pod race, and then they go to Coruscant and he isn't anymore. But like, for that space taxi ride, he was free.
You know what? I would say also between the time when he turns on Windu and becomes Vader, he probably had becomes mechanical Vader. He probably still had some amount of he was willfully doing things, but no,
I don't think he really had a choice mentally. I think
probably
at
not.
that point Palpatine had gotten him to drink the Kool-Aid to the point where it wouldn't have mattered.
You're probably right.
Oh, H. Marie, you have words of wisdom you wish to impart?
Well, I put my idea in the chat and nobody responded, but I just decided to look up the credits and we have names for our characters. There's no more speculating.
Oh yeah, no, we still go ahead though.
So the gentleman we're looking at on the screen right now, the character's name is Balin Skoll. Skoll.
Okay, that's a new character name then.
Yep.
That's why I think it's a combination of both theories. Sorry.
And then the girl, the blonde, is Shin Hattie, is her name. But there's a couple other characters in here I wasn't expecting from Rebels, so that's nice.
Cool. Also, you realize that the entire fandom is going to short form her name to Shin Hati, right? Like everyone's aware?
I am now.
It's might turn into a dirty name, unfortunately, but it is what it is.
Well, I mean, I'm going to go with Hati. I think that's the most PC acceptable version.
Well, maybe we still have a standard of PG-13 on this show. But yeah, I mean, it's so the name of the character doesn't match up with the one that Thrawn was trying to use to rebuild the Sith. So that just leaves more ambiguity and question. Like I said, that little thing in the background, that just brings possibilities to Star Wars. That's all I can really say. Is the Veil of the Force is a huge game changer overall. And I think it'll be interesting to watch how this series plays. But otherwise, I mean, we got other Rebels characters, which is cool to see. And
that droid, the David Tennant droid there, that guy. You know who that guy is, right? Do you guys remember Clone Wars?
Oh. I'd have to refresh my memory on the character more specific. Oh, wait, did Tennant voice the original character too?
Yes, he did.
That's right. I remember pointing that out in our recent watch through.
So, in the Clone Wars episode where a group of young Padawan or pre-Padawan Jedi are taken to Ilum to get their first lightsabers, this is the droid on board the ship that teaches them how to construct their first lightsabers. And supposedly he has the memory of every lightsaber style construction ever to exist. So when he says, perhaps it's time to begin again, that's a very interesting line.
Oh, I totally buy into all of it. Absolutely. I'm right there with you in that it's ambiguous, and yet it's the last line said in the trailer. And then we have, I mean, the Ahsoka logo is even presented. Again, more emphasis on the Veil of the Force here. This is not, this is probably my final Star Wars Alamo this time for sure. I mean it, guys. If this sucks, I'm walking away. I don't care. I mean, I'll probably play the video games because at least those haven't been trash, but I'm just like, I wouldn't have made this my Alamo if I didn't know, if the Veil of the Force wasn't there and if George Lucas hadn't been on set. Probably wouldn't be as excited, to be perfectly honest. But the Veil of the Force looks to be a very important part of this series, and George Lucas was probably on set. So if George Lucas is signing off on more canon, it's definitely worth our time and consideration.
Yeah, I mean, look, to me, the big piece that I took away was with Timothy Zahn consulting with Filoni. You have what I would argue, though. Look, Dave Filoni is probably the one writer I would say that if George were to pass the torch to, I would be okay with that being passed to Dave Filoni. Right? Um, and Timothy Zahn is in a very close second. So the fact of the two of them working together, it's the chocolate and peanut butter of Star Wars writing.
Excuse me.
So
Yeah, it it's just more reason to keep some hope alive. Scogli said it's like those Amish shin hotties. Ooh, scandalous.
oh yeah, there we go. There we go. I mean, she's going to wind up showing a little bit of ankle under her Sith robe there,
Whoa,
right?
even to say such is just inappropriate for this show. Yeah, I'm just kidding. We do classy dick jokes here. But yeah, I think we've said all we need to about Ahsoka at this point, and unless any of our viewers want to talk about it some more, we'll definitely bring it back up. But now it's time for the portion of the show, which brings us to our open mic, open-ended Star Wars discussion. So actually, I got to change some things on here. So Corione, why do you care way too much about Star Wars?
Well, look, there are a lot of books out there and a lot of series and a lot of fiction out there that deal with like wizards and mysticism and whatnot. And some of them are very, very well done, like Avatar: The Last Airbender. Some of them are absolutely horrendously, terribly done, like, the Harry Potter kind of series where it's so schlocky, it's fun. But what Star Wars did was they managed to strike a really good balance and say that, no, 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 you have to have a spiritual component to your crazy space wizardry. If you're going to choke people with your mind, you have to put in the dedication, the work. You have to learn to start by, like, I don't know, choking a stone or something, right? Like, you've got to put in the effort, and that there was this kind of spiritual level to the Force. And I started really digging into where George Lucas was getting his ideas for the Force from. And the more I read, the more I realized he was as well read on esoteric subjects as I was. And that to me was a huge piece. And I started going, wow, he's put in a realistic, reasonable, understandable, spiritual system inside a story with, lasers and smugglers and guys wielding energy swords when you have blasters in existence. That's pretty damn cool. And then, other writers picked up the mantle and said, we need to explain some of this stuff. And they really created something special here. So, the mysticism, if you will, of Star Wars is what drew me in. And I stayed for the stories where we have, a smuggler and his walking carpet sidekick, right? Where we have tiny, angry drop bears, beating up on stormtroopers like it's Space Australia. Like, we have all kinds of craziness in there that just works so well. And, we all grew up hearing our grandparents' stories about World War II and fighter jets and naval battles and all kinds of crazy stuff. And then we were seeing space versions of them on screen. Even if it didn't totally work with what we understood about physics, the feeling, though, of hearing those stories told by our grandparents, the feeling of seeing those incredible pieces of mythology playing out, and the fact that he effectively took a Greek tragedy and updated it to include space wizards and lasers, that's something really special. It's something really unique, and it really spoke to me. So I did what I do when anything catches my interest. I overindulge. I dug way too deep. I had to know all the lore, and that's why I got into it.
Yeah, I'm sad John isn't here because this is a part of the show I was hoping to get into with him on, but unfortunately, life is life. So for me, I've been a Star Wars fan. I think I came out of the womb swinging a lightsaber, if I'm being perfectly honest. I've absolutely loved this this universe that George created. It's careful, you're gonna break your neck agreeing with me so hard. It's oh well, that's why we're here to do this. For me, it really just helped foster my imagination in a lot of ways. From wanting to pick up a stick in the woods to want to go run around to even making my own Star Wars fan film, which I've decided I will show on a Star Wars special like this after we hit our 1,000 subs. Yes, I can link the trailer. I even posted the trailer saying, hey, if anyone wants me to see this, I'll put a copy up. No one responded, so we'll try again next year. And, but the point is, what I also really came to, I think what I ended up respecting most about Star Wars, though, wasn't so much the shows and movies themselves. It was what George to me is a huge inspiration as a creator, not just in the success of Star Wars, but really his failures with Star Wars. Failures like not having someone check your work on the prequel trilogy, and the biggest failure of all, which was selling Star Wars to Disney. He clearly regrets it. If he didn't, if he didn't, he wouldn't have shown up to the set of Mandalorian. He wouldn't have been on the set of Ahsoka. $4 billion he sold his life's work and legacy for. $4 billion. You know what I could do with $4 billion? I could buy a nice house in Key West. I could buy a freaking, vertical takeoff and landing aircraft that I could just launch from my backyard. Not a helicopter, a plane. I could buy my own Osprey. That kind of money. My own Osprey, battle tank. Pretty much, I could basically buy my own small army for $4 billion. All that stuff that I want to do, that I would try to help people with, that's what I would do with my money. But he did that. He sold his money while already being filthy rich from Star Wars. He sold it for more money is what I should say. And it wasn't enough for him. If I was George and if I sold Galaxia, if I sold the intellectual property rights to Galaxia for $4 billion, you want to know what what I think I would do? I wouldn't care. I'd walk away from it. I'd be like, I got my billions. I'm sorry Disney is going to ruin Galaxia for you guys, but I got my billions.
Yeah, bro, with $4 billion, you could actually buy a Nimitz class carrier.
And he didn't do it. I mean, come on. So the moral of the story with George Lucas selling Star Wars is don't sell your life's work. It would have been fine if he had signed off portions of it to let them continue. I'm not saying that, having new Star Wars is bad. I'm just saying that the way he went about it, giving up full creative control, was a huge mistake. But what he may have, made a mistake later in life for, I think the best thing that he did, and again, this inspired me as a creative as well, was when he set the rules for fan fiction. This, I think, should just be the fan fiction standard for any universe. And this is where CBS not only dropped the ball, they basically shot themselves in the balls. George Lucas basically said that anything that doesn't interfere with the movies is canon. So that means conflicting sequel stories. That means, that's the reason why KOTOR was always considered canon, was because it takes place 4,000 years prior. And as long as it didn't interrupt or directly interfere with his works, it was considered canon. And all of us fans, Timothy Zahn, for example, got to make some huge contributions. I even got to make some fan contributions in the form of a movie and even creating my own fan fiction, which of course then helped me to further work on my writing to create my own original story. So all this happened because of George. And that's one of the reasons why I really only hated George because other people hated him. At the end of the day, I think he's just a regular ass human. I'd love to have a beer with him, and I'd love to ask him just one question. Was it worth it? And I think he knows what I'm talking about. That's all I want to know from him. Was it worth selling? Because I used to joke that the bid for the Galaxia intellectual property rights starts at $80 million. Because, I mean, in my situation in life, $80 million would even be its own kind of boost. But I'm at the point where I'm not for sale. I'm not going to sell my life's work. It's not worth it.
Yeah, just putting it out there. It's only 4 million or so for a modern day tank. So 80 million.
That's a few tanks. And then I got to go on the black market to actually get armament for it. But the problem is, it's never worth it because no amount of money can ever come up to actually. And this is what's even sillier about the whole thing. Though the original idea with Star Wars was the concept. George Lucas sold the concept of Star Wars. The other people, especially involved with the original trilogy, were the ones who made it work. He just came up with the idea, pushed it through to get it made, and more or less reaped the rewards. He wanted to make the sequel trilogy because he wanted his name only on his own legacy, and that's, again, you talk about mistakes that you learn, that's something I don't ever want to have to do. While I do expect 90% or greater accuracy for any adaptations of my work, I'm also open to a couple of interpretations here and there. I'm also open to at least hearing new ideas. I'm open to criticisms. And so that's why, at the end of the day, yeah, it sucks that Star Wars is owned by Disney, but it still means a lot to me regardless. I know that Star Wars isn't in a great state, but you know what? Here's the things Kathleen Kennedy can never do. She can't erase the original trilogy. Even if they decide to foolishly do a reboot of the original trilogy, I have copies of the original trilogy. I know other people, other Star Wars fans, who have hard VHS copies of the Star Wars special. Okay? If Georgie couldn't erase the Star Wars special from existence, the OT ain't going anywhere. Even in the original unmessed with versions.
Oh, I'm actually going to propose an idea for next year's May the 4th. I think we need to watch the holiday special.
We're watching the version with the MST3K crew making fun of it. Unless you're talking about us watching and doing it live while doing it you want to make fun of it ourselves.
Yeah, we got to do it ourselves.
Got a year to prepare myself for that. Hope it's long enough. I hope it's long enough.
That should be long enough to interview a therapist to be able to help you get through it.
It's on the table to maybe not do it for May 4th for me, but to even consider doing it a little bit sooner.
Okay.
But we will talk in December.
You thinking a Christmas special?
I mean, our Christmas cringe was so much fun last year.
Yeah, there you go.
We will. You know what? We're just gonna see how we feel come December. Because it would be good for a May 4th special like this, but it could also be great for the holidays. Because I mean, that is what it was written for. So, all right, we'll have to think on that and talk about it as time goes on. But yes, at some point, I think the Writer brothers will attempt to sit through the holiday special and live to tell about it. Oh man,
just get through it the way Carrie Fisher did. Be so stoned that you don't remember actually filming it.
The last time I watched it, I may or may not have been stoned, and it wasn't enough. It was still, I was like, I regret watching this again.
No, you have to get Carrie Fisher stoned. Like that level.
Yeah, no. Yeah, no, we're too broke for that. No, this was my first time watching it this last time we just did, and I really don't want to watch it again.
You've seen things, huh?
I don't want to see them again. I can't unsee them.
I will say there are some good things in the holiday special.
Yeah, like the ending.
Well, no, the first appearance of Boba Fett was actually pretty good.
And how well has that aged?
Well, listen,
is it actually worth it to you to sit through the holiday special just to watch the kick-ass Boba Fett cartoon while thinking in the back of your mind, Book of Boba Fett is a thing?
No. First, it's Book of Boba Fett, not
Book
Boba
of Booba Fett.
Yeah, Booba Fett. because like that ain't the
Because
same
boobs.
guy. Because that ain't the same guy. You know, that's like his brother Stan or something that wound up taking over and just kind of screwed it up.
Jason Fett.
Yeah, you know, like it's some other dude. Um, and that all being said, look, the Mandalorian half season that we got halfway through Book of Boba Fett was pretty decent. So, you know,
That was the only good. Those were actually better than the entirety of Mandalorian season 3.
well, you know what happened to Mandalorian season 3 that screwed it up, right?
A lot
The-
of things. But
yeah,
also
the
that,
first
yes, I
half-
know, all the changes, the retcon. That's why I said it should have just been condensed down to a 3.5-hour movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Right?
But
I think we would have all enjoyed that
yeah.
better.
Yeah, but anyway, we can whine about Star Wars in a bit. We're talking about what we love about Star Wars, not what's made us consider our. Yeah. See, I think the reason that we all get worked up over this shit, and it's okay to get worked up. I'm not trying to downplay it. I used to care too much too. I still care a lot. But the point I'm trying to get to is, guys, no matter how bad it gets, they can't erase the memories. The show's being bad doesn't magically, change your life's timeline to be that your memories are now based off of that's not even a thing. Now, I get why, okay? Because I used to conflate my interpretation of the art with the actual product itself. And the truth of the matter is, guys, those two things are separate, always. And the reason why it's important to recognize this difference is because when we like something, we get a bias for it. We think it's good because we like it. There was a time when I thought Star Trek Into Darkness was still fun to watch because I liked parts of it. I now hate that movie. I don't want to watch it anymore. Even though it's got cool scenes. But the point is, there were things about it at the time that I was able to like, but I could also recognize it's a bad movie. It just really is a bad movie. Star Wars Episode 4 is my favorite Star Wars movie. Episode 5 is better.
Yeah.
It just is. It's the best Star Wars film. KOTOR is also a better Star Wars story, but Episode 4 will always be my favorite Star Wars film. It was the first one that's first of the run. It was also the first Star Wars movie I got to see on the big screen. I was fortunate enough to see the new bastardized versions in '97 when they brought them back to the big screen. And oh boy, watching them X-Wings take on the Death Star, that stuff always holds up. But
you know what I would equate the prequel trilogy to, and why, and like really the whole of Star Wars at the end of the day too. You know that like toy that was on all the channels when you were a kid, that it was coming out at Christmas, and like everybody
if you
wanted
don't have
that
this toy, you're the loser of your friends group.
Right. And then, and you bug your parents, you harass them, you plead, you go through like every stage of grief trying to get this toy. And then you get it and you open the box and it just doesn't play the same way as it did in the commercials. Right? That is kind of how I equate Star Wars a little bit. Because after the original trilogy, when we got the prequels and people gave them so much flack, I'm like, guys, this is because you built it up in your head as something that was going to be so much greater than what you perceived the value to be. Look, do I think George Lucas cannot write a romance to save his life? Look, George Lucas cannot write a romance to save his life. But I did enjoy the prequels. I didn't enjoy the sequels pretty much at all. I couldn't find anything in them I liked, and I looked. And it actually, I'll be honest with you.
Visuals.
No, The Last Jedi put me off the sequel trilogy so bad. I never have actually watched Rise of Skywalker.
You are missing out on nothing. I didn't even want to go. I was like,
right?
Go ahead.
Is that the one that I got sick on?
No, that was Last Jedi, which it was appropriate. You got sick on it.
Yeah.
No,
That-
Rise of Suckwanker. Oh man, or rather, deflation of Suckwanker. Was just I was so jaded by that time that I was like, what in the hell is this? That trailer came out, and I'm like, okay, we got some, and there's space horses riding on top of a Star Destroyer. Oh my god. And then I watched it, and I was like, well, I don't feel that bad about it, but as I've thought about it, I'm like, I think that people liked Rise of Skywalker because it undid all of the stuff people hated in Last Jedi. But I believe that South Park was totally right when they said that Force Awakens was not as good as we thought. And that was really where and that's when I was and that's the big difference between member berries and fan service. You got to remember, Force Awakens, everything you expect to get out of that movie is in the trailer. You can watch the trailer and not have to watch the movie. You get the Millennium Falcon, you get Han and Solo, excuse me, Han and Chewie, you get lightsabers, you get a guy who kind of sort of looks like a Chinese knockoff of Darth Vader. You get
and new X-Wings.
You get X-Wings. You get all that stuff. Guys, remember. Okay, that's the difference. Whereas the Picard Season 3 trailer, we didn't see shit. Fan service. Huge difference there. The overall point being, Force Awakens, in my opinion, I reference as being a good example of blending proper sci-fi and practical effects. But overall, I will never watch it again. I won't watch either of the sequel trilogies, not even to hate watch, not that, just because it's like, what's the point? Yeah. It's garbage. I don't care about it. So no, but I think Rise of Skywalker was actually worse as a movie, though. If I was to decide to objectively compare the three, not worth it. Not even worth it. There's nothing to salvage.
No, there's no way I could sit you down and do a review of me with one of those movies.
You have a better shot of getting me to watch the Star Wars Holiday Special Raw than you do to ever get me to watch the sequel trilogy ever again. Because I at least know we're going to have fun.
That sounds like a challenge. That really does.
They tried a modern reboot of MST3K, and it was... I think we need a proper... I'm thinking about making it a normal thing for us, for modern movies, but we'll get back to that. The point is, because I do have fun making fun of movies, as H. Marie would know. And I'm sure other people, but...
Oh, so somewhere there's his hidden secret recording of Mexican Iron Man and I watching the Halo series. And it is probably the funniest hour of both him and I looking at a screen going, "Ow, why?" you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to be drunk, stoned, and on something I haven't tried yet, and then we can make fun of the Star Wars sequels. But we get through if I somehow survive the holiday special and I'm not dead after that, we'll look at tearing apart the sequel trilogy. We'll think about it. That could be something that this channel could really grow on, is watch throughs MST3K style, just to add to our variety. That's not like going to be a staple. Our staple is everything we do. All right, need to get to Scogly's comment, and then H. Marie will share why she cares too much about Star Wars. Scogly says, I was raised by religious extremists. I was not allowed to watch Star Wars, so I had to sneak and watch it behind my parents' back, which added a ton of power to what I was finally able to witness. The absolute pinnacle of what Star Wars is, in my opinion, is undeniably the Return of the Jedi. That was my favorite one growing up, Scogly. I really liked that one. I think that it also gets a lot of hate because the movie in of itself is basically the resolution of the entire, saga, the entire story. I mean, 4 is kind of its own contained arc, but even then we get 5, which shows a continuation, and then we have 6 is basically wrapping up all the greatness of 5. So I don't know. I get that people just don't like it because it's too much of a battle actiony thing, but it's Star Wars. What more do you
Yeah,
want?
and to be honest,
The
I
thing,
think when you talk about your favorite sequel or your favorite original trilogy movie, there is no wrong answer.
not with the original trilogy, no, and it's my favorite Star
Yeah.
Wars movie across the board. I mean, I
Yeah.
still get nostalgia for the prequels, and I can see why Mexican Iron Man loves Star Wars Episode 2. I mean, that Jedi battle,
Yeah.
it was, John and I and our other younger brothers and other neighborhood kids, we reenacted that shit all the time. I mean, you know, hey, you guys want to see my lightsaber? Like, no, we're actual fanboys. I mean, we're not just fanboys. We're actual nice. Oh yeah, the Dooku saber.
Have a pair of them so I can go Ventress if I need to.
I'm typically a single blade Jedi Guardian myself, but I will use two if necessary. Couldn't really get into the staff thing, felt very limiting, but just something about single use blade. I don't know. I feel more. It's just my style.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm gonna get finish up Scogli real quick, and then we'll go to H. Marie. Scogli says that scene at the end of the movie where Miss Palpatine just rechristens herself as a Skywalker, biggest eye roll ever, followed by the curses in general. Totally agree. The throne scene are captivating, yes, and anything after Luke surrendering himself to Vader is captivating, yes. See, that final, I still hold that the fight in 6 is the best lightsaber fight of them all, because it's the final duel. The music is good. Now, here's where we get to what we're talking about, conflating the art. The reason why 6 got better for me, believe it or not, is because of Star Wars Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast, a video game. Because on the last mission, before you confront the main bad guy, you have to go through the Jedi Temple, and it's playing that same track of Luke and Vader fighting. And it's just so, like, you're coming to the end of the line. You just, slugged out 3 months on the GameCube to get to this moment. And I happen to have the stereo going loud, and it was just epic. But then I watched that fight and saw that that was the song that Williams had written originally for that fight. And suddenly the emotions of this entire sequence changed, because it was like, oh, Williams' brilliance to emote for the character's behalf is what I think a lot of people don't understand why his music is good. Yes, he's got a lot of blockbusters, but the Jaws theme, for example, is not just there to scare you. It's the way that the shark talks to you in the film. And that's what he also does in Star Wars when he's trying to properly add emotion. He doesn't just add emotions to scenes. It's almost like he understands the characters themselves, and that's the music that's going on in their heads.
Yeah.
And so that's why when I was able to get new perspective on that fight, that's why I think that the Episode 6 lightsaber duel is the best, because it's everything that's built up in the trilogy, and the the fight, the struggle between good and evil and father and son, and it's just. Yeah.
I mean, to me personally, my favorite lightsaber duel is always going to be Dooku fighting Anakin and Obi-Wan in Episode 2. If only because I trained as a fencer. I know how to fight like that. And watching a classically trained fencer with a lightsaber and going, yeah, that's exactly how I would do it. Minimal movement, economy of movement, economy of energy, and just letting these young whippersnappers flip around and do stupid stuff, and you just cut them to ribbons for being all flashy, was like absolutely how I fight. And I love that that's how it went forward. And I sat there going, like, finally, I am seeing how I understand to fight on it. Now, don't get me wrong, episode like Return of the Jedi's kendo battle, like kendo sword fighting style at the end, because that was a kendo fight, make no mistake, was beautiful, and it really added to the flavor of that the first 3 movies were really inspired by Kurosawa movies, right? But to me, seeing a fencer fence with a lightsaber was just amazing to me.
Yeah. Yeah, no. All right. H. Marie has been so patient, and we do want to let her speak. But first, we got to do an ad break. No, I'm just kidding. Go. Uh, Actually, wait. I'm going to get Scogly's comment one more time because it's there. Scogly says, "I'm not certain, but I think it's Palpatine's theme. Those three low alternating notes, deeply ominous." Yeah, yeah. If you're talking about the fight, but I mean, like I said, just Williams' ability to emote not just the scene but the characters with the music was just
Perfect.
something else. I mean, it's like, to me, the music without John Williams, Star Wars would not even have made it as far as it did. So yeah. Now, H. Marie, why do you also care too much about Star Wars?
Okay, well, I'm the anomaly. I grew up loving both Star Trek and Star Wars. My mom preferred Star Trek more. My dad loved both, but had all of Next Gen on VHS. But my Star Wars actually runs kind of deep in my family, weirdly enough. I had stopped to see my brother when I was actually on my way to go down see Parker when he was coming in from being deployed, and we had met up at an Applebee's. We both get out of the car, and we both know who each other is because we're both wearing Star Wars shirts. We didn't coordinate this. We hadn't seen each other in, oh gosh, at least 15 years. Like, I was a teenager the last time we saw each other, and we both showed up wearing Star Wars shirts. My brother had all the Star Wars gear you could think of because he was a kid when those movies came out. He had all the AT-AT, he had all the Legos, the shirts, everything. I still have some of his memorabilia. Unfortunately, some of his stuff got sold in a yard sale back in the 90s when things weren't that worth that much. So unfortunately lost that. But why do I love Star Wars? I I don't really even know. I just do. It's just kind of a natural. I like watching the movies. They're absolutely thrilling. I do prefer the original trilogy. Pardon me as my cat walks across my desk here again for the millionth time today. Um, I really liked the Ewoks. They were my favorite. Um, granted, little girl, oh, fluffy little bear, yay! Go running after it. Oh,
No, well, I was gonna say, I mean, if you want to keep going, I was gonna say that's another thing that Return of the Jedi gets a lot of flack for, because like, oh, the Empire's brought down by cuddly teddy bears. Yeah, that's just because that's how the costumes came out. The actual lore of the Ewoks, they may have eaten some stormtroopers in the time that it took to get the shield generator built up. Uh, they they were supposed to be depicted as much worse than they were on screen. But anyway, continue with the cuddly bears.
They were actually going to be Wookiees initially.
What? Why not?
They decided not to do Kashyyyk. They decided to do, it was a change because they couldn't get enough large people in the furry costumes. So they decided to go the opposite direction. And it's cheaper to hire a whole army of kids than it is to hire a whole army of 7-foot tall dudes.
So again, the original concept was that they were supposed to be vicious killers, and and I think in a galaxy far, far away, even in the correct me if I'm wrong, but in the expanded universe, isn't there a whole problem of Ewok, Wookiee fighting, like the equivalent to being cockfighting?
I don't know about that, but I will say that like Endor has a reputation of being like space Australia. Like the planet, like you go there and you're not careful, the planet will kill you.
Yeah.
Somehow.
So a bunch of
way.
Stone Age civilized teddy bears are not gonna survive that environment being teddy bears, except maybe in the bedroom. But otherwise, outside the tree fort, no, they're supposed to have like claws. They're supposed to be just full on, like, imagine a koala but killer.
do you not know anything about koalas?
Obviously not.
No, dude, koalas will try to kill you dead.
They are incredibly vicious. Oh my god, they are absolutely terrifying when they're pissed off.
And most of them are pretty riddled with syphilis too. So
Oh yeah.
So
not only
again,
will the claws kill you,
again, the Ewoks are basically koalas. Like
Yeah.
that's why it works. Because yes, you think koalas, oh, cute and cuddly. Oh, my face is being ripped off. No.
and even if you survive it, congratulations, you now have syphilis.
Yeah, Ewoks, excuse me. Skogly writes in, I absolutely loved the Ewoks. And there's, yeah. No, I did too. Like, I liked them not just as a kid, but even watching it now as an adult, I'm like, okay, if you know the lore, you know that these creatures are not as cuddly as they appear on screen. And, okay, guys. They were literally about to eat Luke and Han as a feast. They're going to eat them. That's doesn't I just don't understand why people still see it as teddy bears. Like, yes, it's a fun joke to make, don't get me wrong, I enjoy it, but it's just not true to what actually happens in the movie.
Yeah, and another thing to point out, right? 2 of these teddy bears were carrying each individual, right? So when you think about that, and the only reason why there had to be 2 of them was because it was awkward, not because they couldn't lift that much. You know, these are koalas that are not just terrifying koalas. These are koalas that are hitting the gym and don't skip leg day. Right?
Basically, under that fur is just muscle. It's just,
Yeah.
these are,
And rage. Yeah.
yeah.
Right. But what I was going to say is another piece of this is fun fact for those who are interested. The very first date I ever went on with a girl, we were both 8 years old and we were downstairs watching the Ewoks movie, the made for TV Ewoks movie, together on the couch. So there you go.
Skogly adds, stout little pricks.
Yeah, there you go.
Concur. Yeah, it is sad to see the state that Star Wars is in right now. While I am excited for Ahsoka, I'm also, like I said, if it doesn't, I'm not necessarily expecting. I think erasure of the sequel trilogy is impossible. That's why I think it's just going to come down to multiverse, multi-dimensional. I think what it's going to turn out to be is they're basically going to explain it in a way that it's like, sure, you can go enjoy the sequel trilogy and here's your follow-on Rey, but here's how the Rey movie's actually going to start. You see, what happened was, oh look, Luke Skywalker isn't a Force ghost, and we're just going to clarify some things with a quick little 5-minute, retcon movie, and then go from there. That's the only way I could see a Rey movie working, is if there's a promise of, yeah, so that little, that little 15-minute blurb you got at Kenobi that basically dismisses you from ever watching the prequel trilogy again. We're basically going to do that, recut some scenes from the sequel trilogy, and then we're going to explain how, oh yeah, no, all these crazy events happened and Palpatine came back, but Luke didn't die, Finn's also a Jedi, Rey, not the bestest ever, she has a robotic arm, or robotic legs, so it's just something to show that she actually had a struggle. Otherwise, preserving the sequel trilogy as hard canon, it's just not a good idea. Total erasure, I don't think it's going to happen either. So I think we may see some kind of new twist with the Veil of the Force that like allows for the sequels to still be a part of it, but we're gonna get back on course to what was originally planned for Star Wars, and I mean, I think that if you have Timothy Zahn, not just Lucas showing up on, but you have the original writer of Heir to the Empire consulting on this project, I don't know. Corion, what do you want from Star Wars?
Well, okay, what I want specifically from Ahsoka first is I want Thrawn to be allowed to be Thrawn. I want him to be absolutely cold, calculating abjectly terrifying, but also making an awful lot of sense and not making the same mistakes the Empire made. Like, I want to see that one. I want to, for Star Wars going down the line, look, to me, the sequel trilogy needs to be pushed aside. And if we're going to be moving into a future of Star Wars, we need to have, like, I almost want to call it a second renaissance of, the Knights of the Old Republic kind of era feel to it. I want it to feel like the Jedi are established, somehow the Sith are established, and we have this giant galactic conflict, right? Where both sides get a little blurred and a little messy, right? Where we don't have to empathize with every villain. We can have villains that are just bad dudes. Um, I want female characters that are authentically strong characters. Not artificially strong, but authentically strong, right?
Artificially
And
strong characters is not empowering for women at all.
no, it's I think, and I don't want to speak for women here, but if it were
We
me,
have
I
one of
would
those
be
that can speak on
incredibly.
our behalf.
Yeah. Well, I'm just being honest. I would be insulted, right? I would be insulted that somebody was deciding that, you know, uh, they needed to be the absolute bestest ever to make their character reasonable. I don't think that's cool, right? Um, I want, and that's another piece I think that ultimately I want. I want nuanced characters. I want characters to have flaws, but I also want them to be, pretty like reasonable, have reasonable reasons as to why they're involved in stuff, like in galactic events, right? Like, I have no problem with, for example, having a character that absolutely despises hyperspace travel for some reason, but you drop him on any jungle on any planet and he goes full John Rambo. Like, I'd be fine with a character like that, right? Because that's a realistic kind of character, right? That's a realistic portrayal of someone that I could believe is somebody that's fantastic in one environment and is just useless or sucks in another, right? I want authentic characters. I want authentic writing. And I want this to have the gravitas of mythology, but the groundedness to understand that it is, you know, a bunch of dudes making whooshy sounds with a laser sword, right? Like, it's a subtle balance that needs to be achieved, but without it, you don't have Star Wars.
No, you don't, and that's why there's the reason that Mandalorian got so popular in the first place was not because it was tying in legacy characters, or it was not because, I mean, some people, Baby Yoda probably had a portion to do with that, but the thing is, for me, when I watched Mandalorian episode 1 for the first time, not knowing anything about what was going to happen, I was back in Star Wars episode 4. I was right back in the Star Wars universe that I had been missing the entire time. It felt correct. Rogue One, to me, I'm sorry, you want to talk about a nostalgia porno memberberry film? Rogue One hits it right there. Classic X-Wings, classic Death Star, classic Star Destroyers. They even have Darth Vader with a lightsaber in there, of course. To their credit, they didn't. No, they put Vader in the trailer. They put him in the trailer. They did the member berries. Yeah, Rogue One is a member berries trailer too.
Yeah, but they didn't overuse them either.
To me, it was just X-wing porn. Like, that's really all. I don't. The characters are all planks of wood. I don't care about any of them. The ones that I kind of did give a shit about, they didn't really work with, or they all just they killed them all. When I think they should have kept at least one alive, either the Imperial pilot or, forgot the guy's name. Admiral Aimbot, I guess you could call him, because he lands every shot. At least one character should have made it. I don't ever, I think about Rogue One and I'm like, I don't care to have to see that again.
I don't know. Grand Moff Tarkin survived. Vader survived. There were characters that made it out.
Hilarious. No, but people like it though, and I'm okay with that one being there. But it didn't feel like Star Wars. Mandalorian episode 1. I'm back there and I'm back in the theater as a kid. I'm back in my own fan fiction universe, writing my own adventures again. It felt correct. Even season 2, I thought was also really good. I thought Mando just got better with season 2, and then Book of Boba Fett and this season, and oh boy. Well, we have a lot of good examples of what never to do again. So there is that. But like I said, Ahsoka's starting to feel that way again too. I watched the Ahsoka trailer. I'm like, that there's just it's capturing something. It's doing something correct.
It feels right.
It feels right, and that is as irrational and illogical as that is. That's the best way that I can put Ahsoka. It's something's being done right with that one. So, oh boy.
You know what I think I'm gonna do for Ahsoka? As I watch the episodes, I'm gonna write down my impressions and I'm gonna put them on our Discord as an incentive for people to take a look.
That's a good idea. Go ahead, H. Marie.
Well, I have stories to share now
Ooh.
about
Ridiculously embarrassing stories about Petey? Go for it.
Yes. So, it's actually kind of part of how Parker and I met originally. We've actually known each other since middle school. I met Parker as the awkward homeschool kid who came into public school. He was very tall, he was very skinny, bright blonde hair, and a rat tail.
Wasn't a rat tail.
I don't know if you guys heard him. He said it wasn't a rat tail. It was he had a braid going down the side like Anakin did. He was so into it that there was actually a ceremony at the end of the school year to cut it off. I believe there was a recording. I don't quite remember, but my memory's patchy.
This was apparently a big deal for all you dumb fucks, and I don't know why, but it was. Well, I was also socially awkward and inept at just about everything to deal with normal people. Still am. Anyway, yeah, no, I was bigoted. It was actually our mother's idea, and all 4 of us boys had one. And it was our way to express our love of the show. But I mean, I still stayed a Star Wars fan despite all the damn jokes and teasing. And yes, it was a huge deal to cut it off, and I probably have left that memory imprinted on people. I actually did. As the years went on through school, I'd encounter people in the wild, and that's how they knew me. And it was like, well, guess I got to be remembered for something in that regard. Did you have any more you wanted to share off to the world? Anyway. Actually, what was funny though too is 8th grade was actually when Revenge of the Sith came out. And that's when Star Wars was great again at school. We were having lightsaber fights afterwards, and with like the real lightsabers too. Those flip out ones from Walmart you'd actually beat each other to death with. Yeah. No, those were good times. Before the dark times. Before adulthood.
Before the Disney?
Before the Disney. Or as I like to say when it comes to the Star Wars video games, the Empire. This joke works better spelled out. Bear with me.
Yeah, the EA Empire. Yeah. Man, I don't know. I think selling the Star Wars video game rights to EA was a very, very big mistake.
I cannot decide what was stupider. Yes, I agree. Just selling to Disney or selling the game rights to like the Disney equivalent of video game.
Oh, I don't know what anyone was thinking.
I don't think they were.
I will say I really liked Jedi Outcast
That is, oh, you mean Fallen Order?
or Fallen
I
Order.
was gonna
Yeah.
say I like Jedi Outcast too. That was
Yeah, or
also under
sorry.
LucasArts. That's
Yeah,
why.
sorry, Fallen Order. I thought was absolutely fantastic. I thought that they really captured what I want in a Star Wars game. Like, look, I like SWOTOR. I think it's a lot of fun. It's great rocking around in my, like flying pimp mobile that is my Sith warrior spaceship, where, every non-me character is in a gold bikini or gold speedo, right? But you know, at the end of the day, to me, the best Star Wars games I've ever played have been solo, like single player experiences where I'm, living through somebody living in the universe. And, Survivor or Fallen Order was just the perfect conglomeration of that. The powers made sense, they were fun, the story felt genuine. It worked. And it's the first time I can actually give praise to EA about a video game in like the last 15 years.
Yeah, well, they haven't been doing SWOTOR any good, unfortunately. So that they could do to give BioWare a bigger dev team or work something. I don't know. Either way, yes, Fallen Order I've heard was good. I played some of it. I didn't finish it. I knew that once it was done, it was done. So I still am getting around to the sequels out. I still haven't finished it.
I highly recommend it, if only for the ending. The ending is amazing.
I will. Because
if you decide to play through it when you get to the last base in the game, please live stream it and let me watch you.
I think I might just live stream the whole playthrough when I get around to it, actually. I might even do Titanfall that way, too. Yeah, that could be a fun thing to do, because, yeah, if I do it on Super Quest, I'd have to do it solo anyway. Something to consider. What I hope to see with Star Wars is just bring the magic back, if you can. Or bring new magic. But maybe look at what worked in the past, because the thing is, you can't say with Star Wars that there isn't a Star Wars product aside from the holiday special, and not really counting the new stuff. I mean, even the sequel trilogy, I'll sit through and watch them. Or not sequel, excuse me, prequel. God, so dumb. Even the prequel trilogy, I will sit through and watch through, because if not just for the nostalgia, really just for the fact that there's good things I can take from it. The plot, the storyline is good. It's just so badly executed, it gets lost in the constant green screens and the monotone acting and just a lot of the things that Lucas probably should have asked for assistance on. But it is, is what it is. I can learn from his mistakes. But there's stuff that worked. I mean, Star Wars merchandise does still sell. Original trilogy, prequel trilogy. That's about it. I would also, but really what I think I want for Star Wars, I know what I really want deep down. And that's a return to the golden age of Star Wars gaming. From around that 2001 to 2004-ish time, when we had like a new Star Wars game every few months, and it was good. I mean, Jedi Outcast, the Clone Wars games, there was a ton of different Clone Wars games I played across the Game Boy Advance, GameCube, Xbox. Obi-Wan game was really good. I think that was, that's
I would even go as far back as 97 for the X-Wing TIE Fighter.
Yeah, Lawrence, you're right. The Golden Age did sort of begin with the Lawrence Holland X-Wing versus TIE Fighter X-Wing Alliance, which are still not a single Star Wars Starfighter. Starfighter was good. Jedi Starfighter was better. they don't even come close to what the Lawrence Hall. I mean, just such an involved game that really. I gotta try and get through X-Wing Alliance again, but man, is that when I forgot how much like an arcade those games are. It's like,
Yeah, I actually bought like a really good flight joystick controller, all that stuff,
you kind of have
purely
to.
because, yeah.
Like even on an Xbox controller, it's a struggle. You really got to have that old 90s joystick when they had Ace Combat and all those other flight simulator games that were popular back then.
Yeah, like at some point I'm gonna get myself a set of VR goggles and try to make X-Wing or sorry, TIE Fighter, because I personally prefer TIE Fighter. I've got to get TIE Fighter going on VR goggles and like actual joystick controls and everything.
I mean, even the new Star Wars Starfighter game, I personally found it to be very, like, lacking. Like, it had the good elements of Lawrence Holland, but it just wasn't there yet. It was
Yeah.
still in need. Another good homage to Lawrence Holland, though, is actually the Galactic Starfighter expansion that they added on SWTOR.
Yes.
At least mechanically speaking. I found the flight controls using mouse and WAS and D to fly I didn't think was possible, and yet there it is. I liked it. I like it a lot. Unfortunately, Galactic Starfighter itself could use some polishing and some incentive for people to play, but as far as what they did, as far as a Starfighter build, if you are a Starfighter enthusiast, definitely give SWTOR's Galactic Starfighter a try. It's a bit of a pain in the ass to get access to because you have to make a character and I think play to level 15 or so. But
You have to at least get to the point in the series where you have your own ship.
oh, okay. Oh, that's right. You recently did it. So you did
Yeah.
try Galactic Starfighter and you liked it?
It wasn't bad. I found that it felt kind of on rails-ish, and I wanted to be more off rails.
Oh, my friend. I think you are getting confused with the solo story play with the multiplayer Galactic Starfighter actual, like, where you get to customize your own starfighter or bomber or
Oh no, I didn't get to toy with that.
yeah. Okay, so
Oh,
that's
okay.
what you want to go. Okay, so that's your homework for tonight. If you still have SWTOR installed, that's
Oh, I
what you
do.
should go. Yeah, go check out Galactic Starfighter tonight.
Yeah,
'Cause-
dude, there was no way I was gonna give up the pimp mobile I've got going.
good, because I need to get back into that game again, and we are going to a Super Quest anyway. So, yeah, no, we will definitely get back into SWTOR. But yes, Galactic Starfighter, very, very similar to the Lawrence Holland style of play. Completely open access flight, and it's a lot of fun when you know what you're doing and you're not in a match with a bunch of diehard sweats who have nothing better to do but play specifically Galactic Starfighter all day. So if you can, put up with getting killed all the time, it's really great. Now, it really is, as far as what they built, it's just the execution and the fact that they don't have, like, just a backdoor, hey, if you like Starfighter play, here's a dumbed-down version of the game client that only does Starfighter. Because I think that would be a way to incentivize a lot of people to get into SWTOR's Galactic Starfighter. But yeah, 98 was probably the pinnacle of video gaming in general. But Star Wars, the Star Wars Golden Age, yeah, started in 97, peaked in about 2001, 2002, and then probably, that was pretty much it. I think after, yeah.
I would say after the original Battlefield 2 was when things started to decline.
For gaming in general?
Well, no, for like the Star Wars Battlefield 2.
Battlefront 2. Oh,
Battlefront,
yes. Yeah, so after Revenge of the Sith, because, yeah, that one was actually a weak year for Star Wars games. I was kind of depressed at how little Star Wars content we got with the release, because with Episode 2, not only did you get those themed games, like I said, you got Jedi Outcast, which was great. You got, I think that was also when the Galactic Battlegrounds expansion came out, too. Was in 02, and that was fantastic, even though it was just a Star Wars skin of what's it called? Age of Empires.
Yeah. There's actually a really good one, Star Wars Empire, Empire at War, I think it is.
I may or may not decide to stream that after this stream. Because I re-downloaded it, and yes, that one is still good. Oh man, I love Empire at War. That is one of the best RTS games ever developed.
We might have to multiplay that at some point, Rebels versus Empire.
Having the
We might
sand
have to do
consortium
that.
pissing us off in between.
My general rule of thumb is Zan goes down first, then we deal with it.
I might be down to do that, because I was actually going to solo speed in Empire, because if you're playing solo, the only way to play is Empire. I mean, come on. Unless you want to really feel the real life struggle of the rebellion, which the Empire at War, Forces of Corruption, Galactic Conquest definitely lets you feel that struggle as the rebellion. Holy crap, is that like hard.
I did find some interesting ways to deal with that. Like, if you're the rebels and you can get to and hold Camino, you actually have a fighting chance by just spamming troops.
Camino. Okay. I'm gonna have to keep that in mind, because yeah, the thing I love with I can't play the original anymore because the original only has the Death Star, which is fun, but the expansion has Death Star 2, as well as the Super Star Destroyer that takes up half of the map because it's scaled size. It's like, all right, I want to move this thing to the other side, and it moved 2 inches, and it's stuck. All right. Well,
but it doesn't matter because I can still fire at it.
Our ion cannons have been destroyed at the front half of the ship up there. We're still fine, but I'm sorry. I made that more dramatic sounding than I should have. I hate when because I think there's only 2 up there. So like, our ion cannons have been destroyed. And you look at the ship and it's like, yes, but like your other 500 guns and your engines and your 3 shield generators are still up.
I don't know. My favorite move in that game of all time is bringing in an interdictor craft, or like having it in reserve. And when the rebels start to run, bring it out of reserve and immediately lock down hyperspace at the last second, just to give them enough hope to believe they're going to get out with their skins.
Yeah.
And then just be like, no.
Well, and the best part, of course, about playing Empire on Empire at War is that you have Steve Bloom to voice half of your stormtroopers, half of your TIE pilots, but of course, my personal favorite, we are victorious. I can't imitate Steve Bloom, and I don't think anybody can. I don't even think Steve Bloom can imitate Steve Bloom. But yeah, just that we are victorious with the fanfare going off in the background. Oh yeah, that's one of my favorite parts every time. Yeah, now the Empire's ground game, the Empire's ground game is so unfairly advantageous in Empire.
The Empire's ground game to me always subsisted of spam AT-ATs and the anti-aircraft AT-AT, like anti-aircraft walker, and just curb stomp everything in your path.
And some maulers, little extra maulers just to really piss people off by squashing your troops and blowing up their rocket launchers. The only unit the rebels really have that's even functional on the ground. The speeders, when the anti-air stuff is not available, and the missile launcher things that are super easy to destroy.
The artillery?
The artillery.
Yeah.
Other than that, the rebel ground game is rough.
Although I would actually argue that Han and Chewie are kind of OP if you know how to use them.
They have to be though. Because if you play that game without heroes, the rebels is freaking
they're just
hardcore. It is so hard to do. Well, not just that, but the Empire's ground game gets even more OP when you get the Death Star.
Yeah. No, you always have the high ground.
You always have the high ground in that you destroy it all the time.
See, I don't know. I didn't like wiping out planets, but I definitely was like, no, space is mine. I'm using that Death Star cannon on your space station every damn time.
How much you want to bet that Vader was thinking to himself when they blew up Alderaan? Spoiler alert. when they blew up Alderaan in Star Wars, how much do you would have bet Vader was thinking to himself, well, where's your high ground now, bitch? That's right.
Right?
Nobody gets the high ground. I am the high ground now.
You know, like the only piece that I've ever had
High ground?
about,
How about no ground?
yeah, the only piece I've ever had about the Death Star is like it took them how much to build one of those things, right? Like I don't see how they could have like they really, when really they needed like a dozen of them, right? Like that's the key there, right? Is like I don't
Well,
know how you mass produce small moons,
well,
right?
you do what Thrawn did, and you mass produce Star Destroyers with Death Star lasers on them.
Yeah, right.
That's it. Or was that the Eclipse Cruiser?
That was the Eclipse.
Oh.
That was First Order nonsense, man. No,
Oh.
Thrawn was never big on super weapons. He
Thrawn's
was
not big on
on
any Empire standard at all. He's actually the reason the Empire even had a chance post Return of the Jedi.
yeah, no, like he's like actually competent, and that's what's terrifying about him. Like
he
you know,
doesn't
like
play the strength and numbers game. He plays psychological warfare. I'm gonna fuck you up in the mental battlefield, and that's that.
well, no, basically it's he understands his foe to the point where he can predict his actions, and then just picks the best strategy to deal with that particular style of problem, right? You know, it's like honestly, it would be like Napoleon fighting like Schwarzkopf, right? Because Napoleon's sitting there going like, no, 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 no. Here's how we do battle. We all line up in a nice row. Everybody aims and shoots at each other, and it's just a war of attrition. And Schwarzkopf is going to be like, hee hee, tanks are fun, right? Like, and that's how it's going to go. And,
or Washington at Valley Forge. No, no, no. Stand behind the tree. Wait till they show up. Turn around. Shoot them. But I'm not marching. No, you wait behind the tree. Hold your fire till you see the whites of their eyes.
Yeah, like, no, we're not going to play this game of stand there and get shot. We're going to shoot them and fade before they get a chance to do anything to us. And then when it's time for like an actual real battle, that's when we'll stand up in a line and everything. But by the time we get there, we want to make sure we're absolutely going to crush them in that kind of a fight. And you know what? Like that's that's absolutely what Thrawn does. He's like, I'm not going to spend resources, like putting down, an army of angry Wookiees. I'm going to burn down the freaking forest,
I'm going
like,
to stop
gonna
feeding half of them.
Yeah. Like, I'm not going to waste my time doing this. Right. I got bigger things to deal with. Right.
Wait, you're letting the rebels get away. Yeah. I'm letting them think they're more powerful than they actually are.
Yeah.
I'm very good at letting people think they're in charge. Yeah. No, I'm actually excited to see, because they did Thrawn quite well in Rebels. And they have already screwed him up on the live action version, but I don't think it's beyond recovery.
What do you mean? I don't think they did him.
They gave him irises.
Yeah, I mean,
part of the mystique of Thrawn is that he's so calculated, but you also can't tell, because you'd think with those just blood red eyes that he's just some kind of psychopath alien. Part of the mystique of the Chiss is that you can't tell what they're thinking, because all you see is solid red, and they can only emote really with their eyebrows, if they have any, or their eyes. Or you just have to really pay attention to the tone of their voice. But that was the thing about Thrawn, was he could make his most sinister of plans sound enticing and comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what they do with Thrawn in the Ahsoka series. I'm really hoping we get, significant levels of badassery, and like, the opportunity where I can caption a scene where it's, what makes you different than all the other Empire goons that we've taken out? And him being like, I'm actually competent, as a reply, right? Like, I feel like that would be the perfect response. And then just have everyone be like, oh crap, well, now we're screwed, right?
Yeah. No, I still think it'll be fine, and I like that they got the original voice actor to actually play him on screen. I think that's awesome that that's fortunate enough to be able to happen. Sometimes with certain voice actors, it's just, that's not happening. They could definitely do the same thing with Cartho Nassi in a live-action KOTOR. But I would like to wait till we get competent people in charge of Lucasfilm. Disney, keep your hands off of KOTOR still. Keep up with the remake, that's fine. But we don't need...
Oh, you didn't hear the remake has completely fallen through.
Oh, it is done.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's dead.
That's what I think. I knew that too. That's what I said to people when it's like it's going on indefinitely. It's like, well, there's a lot of misconception. Indefinitely means they just don't have a planned release and they don't want to keep promising. And I'm like, sure. How many big games do you know of that went on indefinite schedules that have come back? We're still waiting on, I think, what, Star Citizen,
Duke Nukem Forever actually happened.
Okay.
Spore actually happened.
So those are two. How many others though? Like
Oh
compared
no, like
to...
those are like the two examples.
So when you hear a game going on ice indefinitely, sure, you can keep hope. I'm certainly not going to be the one to take your hope away. I'm not that evil yet. But
well, I'm just reminded of an important bit of lore from the Warhammer universe. Hope is the first step on the road to disappointment.
It certainly can be. I like what Garrick from Star Trek Deep Space Nine says. On the contrary, Doctor, I always hope for the best. Experience, however, has taught me to expect the worst. So it's like, yeah, don't set expectations high, if any at all. But, you don't have to, like, wallow in despair and swirl in a toilet either. That's how I took Garrick. It's just real. It's like, look, yeah, hope's fine. Put that energy out there if that's what you want. But just be ready for disappointment.
Yeah.
As a general rule. Not, expect... Because you also don't want to expect the worst in people. That'd be like me hosting this show. And just, you and John show up in the background. And I'm like, oh, fucking finally, welcome. You guys ready to do a show or what? And you're like, well, what's got you down? Well, I just talked myself into expecting you guys not to show up anymore. That's all. It's got to find the balance,
That's it.
No, I always come in and, you guys show up. I expect us to have an okay show every night. And I'm always pleased. Let's put it that way. I don't expect the show to fail. I just am like, we're going to do our best, but we're always going to have a good time. And we always do.
That is true, sir. That is true.
Yeah, no, I just have to figure out our content map until Nick Jr. TOS is on.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, man. I do have to bounce though.
All right, well, in that case, we'll just quickly close it out because I think we have reached the end of the line. I want to thank Skogli Jotun for showing up and providing some commentary for us. I also want to thank everybody who lurked and watched in the background. I do appreciate you guys, and thanks for listening. We'll be back Tuesday with our regular show at regular time, and we'll see you then. May the Force be with you. This has been a presentation of the Writer Brothers. May the Fourth be with you special. The Writer Brothers, restoring respect into discourse.